Welcome back, dear listener. You're here again, beneath your blanket of stars, ready to drift where science dreams and silence deepens. This is your quiet space, where wonder meets rest, and the universe leans close to whisper stories made of real questions and soft answers. Tonight, we travel far from Earth, past the planets into frozen shadows where suns barely reach, and yet the possibility of life still stirs. We begin a gentle exploration of exoplanets, those distant worlds orbiting distant stars, and asks the question, could something be alive beneath their icy skins? This is not a story of fiction, but of science, told slowly, calmly, like water melting in light. Let your thoughts float like satellites, unhurried and wide-eyed. The night will carry you through oceans that no eye has seen, and perhaps, just perhaps, something ancient and alive is waiting there, deep beneath the alien ice. Asterisk, asterisk, you close your eyes. And in that hush between thought and dream, the sky unfolds like a secret. The blackness above you is not emptied, is breathing. Each star blinks softly, like a memory long forgotten, but not gone. You float there, somewhere between the rhythm of your breath and the pulse of the cosmos. In this stillness, space becomes a sea, and you become a gentle traveler. You drift outward, beyond the familiar glow of your sun, past Mars with its dusty sighs, past Jupiter with its swirling storms, like great unspoken emotions, past Saturn with its rings like frozen songs. The solar system recedes behind you, a glowing memory wrapped in warmth. Ahead lies darkness, vast and endless. But this darkness is not cold, it hums. A low vibration, like the hidden thrum of a living heart. The universe, it seems, is not silent. It whispers, and in its whisper are stories. Stories of distant worlds, exoplanet, stars you've never seen with your eyes, only imagined in your dreams. These are worlds not captured in childhood. Maps of the planets. They are found in the flicker of starlight, noticed by telescopes, watching for the faintest dimming. A planet passes in front of a star, and that tiny shadow tells a giant truth. There is more than we know, more than we've touched. You float gently toward these worlds, not in speed, but in thought. Around you, the universe curves. It is not straight or hard-edged, it flows like water. And you, a soft leaf on its surface, follow its tide. With each passing star, you wonder, could there be another Earth? Could life be curled in the warmth of a hidden ocean beneath layers of alien ice? You think of life not as a spark, but as a rhythmal pattern that repeats wherever it is allowed to breathe. Life doesn't need a city or a garden. It may not need light at all. What it needs, perhaps, is warmth, liquid water, time, and a quiet place to begin. If that's true, then life could be waiting in places far beyond the sun's golden reach. You remember Europa, the icy moon of Jupiter, and Enceladus near Saturn, both shrouded in frost, yet believed to hold oceans below. They're not exoplanets, not yet the stars of this journey, but they hint at something, that even in our own backyard, life might be hiding under ice. What does that say about the stars farther out? You drift toward those stars, the ones beyond our solar system. Each of them has a chance to host a world, and many of them do. The Kepler Space Telescope told us that it stared into a patch of sky and found planet after planet like pearls hidden in a stretch of midnight cloth. Some are large and stormy, some tiny and scorched, but some are just right. Not too close, not too far. In the habitable zone, where water could remain liquid, and where water flows, life might follow. But not all water flows on the surface. Some planets, especially the icy ones, may hide their oceans deep beneath. Their suns may not warm them enough from above, but they may be warm from within. The pull of gravity, the slow kneading of a planet's insides by a neighboring moon, or a massive star creates friction. Friction creates heat, and heat melts ice. Beneath thick, frozen crusts, there may be oceans darker than any night, but still alive with motion. You feel the distance between you and Earth widen, but you do not feel alone. The stars are quiet companions. Their light may be ancient, but it reaches you still. And you wonder, if life exists on one of these icy exoplanets, what would it look like? Would it have eyes, or would it feel the world through waves and vibrations? Would it be soft-bodied, like Earth's deep-sea creatures, glowing with their own light? Would it be curious, aware, even dreaming? You imagine being there beneath a dome of ice, surrounded by silent water. It is not cold in your mind. It is peaceful. No winds howl, no sun's glare. Only the slow swirl of liquid and the warmth of a hidden core. A perfect cradle for something slow-growing and ancient. A creature that has never seen a sky, but knows the rhythm of heat, current, and mineral. A creature that listens to the planet itself. In this stillness, you begin to understand that life does not always race forward. Sometimes it waits. It adapts. It becomes quiet enough to survive where nothing else would dare. In your heart, you begin to feel it's that quiet determination, that persistent reaching. The same force that pushed the first cells to divide on Earth may be pushing cells to form in other oceans, under other stars. You return to the thought of exoplanets, not as alien, but as cousins. Not mirrors of Earth, but variations of the same song. Some may have skies, others may not. Some may shimmer with methane clouds or ice storms, but somewhere among them there may be warmth. And warmth is enough. You think about the telescopes, Kepler, TESS, James Webb Band, the scientists who listen to the sky through data. They do not hear words, but they read patterns. A dip in starlight, a whisper of heat, a spectral line bent just so. And from these signs, they sketch possibilities. They dream like you do now, with purpose. You find comfort in this, that science is not colded, is curiosity wrapped in patience. It is a form of listening, of believing that the universe is full of stories waiting to be gently uncovered. You do not need to rush. Tonight, you are part of this listening, floating quietly through the stars, held in thought, wrapped in wonder. Each exoplanet is a question mark, a lullaby, a possibility. They orbit their stars with steady grace, not knowing we watch, and yet we do. We wonder about their clouds, their climate, their cores, about whether anything stirs beneath their surfaces, whether something lives in silence as we sleep. You take one more slow breath. Your body is here, but your mind is far. Past the edge of maps, past the known and charted, into the imagined and real. You feel the depth of the question, not just, are we alone, but how many ways could life be? How quietly, how patiently, how far from light could life still sing? As your breath slows, you think not just about what's out there, but what's beneath the crusts of ice, beneath the surface of thought, beneath even sleep itself. Something ancient, something constant, waiting to rise, and as your journey for tonight winds down, you feel it's that next gentle pull. The way Europa waits with its ocean curled beneath cracked ice, as if inviting you to look deeper, to wonder more. Asterisk, Europa waits. A pale moon hanging in the cold embrace of Jupiter, its surface marked with long, broken scars lines like whispers, like the stretch of ancient hands beneath fragile skin. You feel that pull again, gentle but steady, as if something beneath its frozen crust is calling. In the silence that follows your breath, you lean closer. You do not arrive in haste, you drift, guided by curiosity, slowed by awe. As your mind floats across that distant moon, the noise of Earth fades. No engines, no voices, no ticking clocks. Only the slow circling of Europa around its massive planet, and the rhythmic dance that has gone on for billions of years. Jupiter tugs at Europa with invisible fingers, not out of malice, but momentum. With every pass, every pull, the moon flexes. Inside, warmth is born. Europa is not warm in the way you know warmth. Its surface is ice, locked, and bright, reflecting sunlight like polished glass. But beneath that icy skin lies an ocean dark, deep, and possibly endless. Not a quiet pond, but a restless sea, churned by the push and pull of tidal forces. Heat rises from the core, not in flame, but in friction, the same way your hands warm when rubbed together. That warmth is enough to melt, enough to stir. You imagine yourself standing on Europa's surface. It is eerily still, a land without air. No wind brushes your cheeks. No sounds reach your ears. Only silence and the deep knowledge that below your feet an ocean moves. The ice beneath you may be kilometers thick, but it is not forever. Below it, something breathes. You close your eyes and dive beneath that ice, not with machines, not with suit or mask, but with thought. Down through the cracks that leak vapor into space. And there, in that quiet dark, you pause. What lives here? Your mind paints shapes, not seen, but sensed. Creatures without eyes, moving slowly through salt and shadow. Their world has no sunrises, no colors, no sky. But perhaps they know warmth in the water. Perhaps they glow, faintly, like the fireflies of the deep oceans on Earth. Bioluminescence, flight from life itself. You remember Earth's hydrothermal vents, places on the seafloor, where heat escapes through cracks. Even in our own dark oceans, far from sunlight, life thrives there. Worms with no eyes, bacteria that eat chemicals instead of sunlight, shrimp huddling together in warm crevices. Life that does not begin with light, but with warmth and patience. Europa may be the same. Its ocean, shielded from radiation and storm, might host vents, two black chimneys pouring out warmth and minerals. And near those vents, something might cling. Not grand civilizations or clever machines, but simple, tenacious life. Life that asks for nothing but time and energy. You drift along an imagined ridge of rock at Europa's ocean floor. There is no need to rush. Every bubble, every flicker, every current tells a story. The ocean is not silent. It speaks in slow waves, in rising plumes, in the dance of tiny particles. You listen, dot above. The ice shifts. It creaks and groans, cracked and healed by the moon's constant motion. From orbit, the lines etched on Europa's surface tell of forces bending and lifting. It is a body that moves, subtly but surely. And movement means energy. Energy means possibility. You wonder about the thickness of the ice. Some say it is 10 kilometers, others say more. But that number is not a wall, it is a threshold, one that future missions may cross. NASA's Europa Clipper, still waiting in Earth's hands, will one day fly close. It will scan, it will listen. It will smell the thin vapor escaping from the moon's vents. And maybe, just maybe, it will find hints of life not directly seen, but softly implied. You hold on to that idea, the quiet discovery. Not a shout, not a headline, but a gentle confirmation, a pattern in salt, a molecule where it shouldn't be. A sign that somewhere in Europa's ocean, life took hold. That you, drifting here in your thoughts, are not imagining alone. Europa becomes more than a moon. It becomes a metaphor for all the hidden places that hold secrets, for the ways life hides, not to escape, but to survive, for how warmth can bloom even in the coldest hearts. It reminds you that exploration is not always about what you see, but what you feel, what you intuit. You think of the other icy moons, Enceladus, Ganymede, Titan, each with their own strange oceans, their own silent songs, but Europa remains close, somehow more familiar. Its scars resemble veins, its silence a breath held too long, and beneath it something stirs. Not all life announces itself. Some life waits. Some life grows slowly, feeding on minerals and mystery. If such life exists on Europa, it has never seen a sunrise. But it may still respond to warmth, to chemistry, to motion. Perhaps it reaches, not upward, but outward, sending signals in the only language it knows. Movement, change, continuation. You place your thoughts in the hands of possibility. What if there is life here? What would it mean for science, for philosophy, for you? That life needs not a planet, not light, not land, but only energy and time. Would it change your definition of home, of kinship, of wonder? The ocean of Europa may never rise to the surface. Its life if it exists, may never greet us with eyes or gestures. But knowing it might be there is enough. It shifts your center of gravity, expands the map. It tells you that even beneath miles of silence, a heartbeat may echo. You imagine one small creature floating in Europa's Black Sea. It has never known the stars. It does not know it's being imagined. But it exists because the conditions are right. It exists because the universe makes room for persistence. You open your eyes again, still beneath that imagined ice, and wonder, what else lies waiting in the dark? What other oceans, wrapped in alien crusts, carry the breath of life? Or is Europa the beginning, or just one verse in a long, hidden song? Your thoughts begin to rise, like bubbles, toward a surface far above. You feel the moon slow spin beneath you. The way it bends to Jupiter's gravity. The way its crust breaks and heals. The way its silence is not emptiness, but a prelude. And as your journey for tonight continues, you feel the pull again, not from Europa now, but from farther still. From a place beyond our system, where other icy worlds drift in the dark. Where the light of their suns is faint, but not gone. You feel them call, not loudly, but persistently. As if they, too, have oceans. As if life might not be rare, but deeply, quietly, common. Asterisk, far beyond Europa, your thoughts float again. Out past Jupiter's heavy rain, through the ringed hush of Saturn, where a tiny moon drifts in silence. You follow its call, the one you felt in the gentle dark, persistent, soft, like breath in cold air. Enceladus is small, barely 500 kilometers across, and yet something about it is impossibly vast. Not in size, but in wonder, as you approach in your mind. Saturn looms in the background, lines golden rings, tilted like a celestial crown. Against this backdrop, Enceladus glows, icy white, smooth and round, like a pearl in orbit. But this moon is not still. You watch, you wait, and then you see it. A plume, a sudden jet of ice and vapor shoots from Enceladus's south pole, glowing in the thin sunlight like a ghostly fountain. It does not roar, it exhales. Over and over, it breathes. The plumes rise hundreds of kilometers high, spilling into space like a message written in steam. In those plumes are grains of salt, crystals of ice, whispers of organics, droplets of an ocean flung upward from deep within. Enceladus, it seems, is not silent at all. You move closer, drifting through imagination. Below the vented South Pole lies a sea, not unlike Europa's a global ocean, sealed beneath an icy shell. But here, the shell is cracked, and through the cracks, the moon sighs. Cassini, the spacecraft that once danced through Saturn's moons, flew straight through those plumes. It tasted them with its instruments, and what it found changed everything. Salt, water, organic molecules, silica, hydrogen, each a letter in the quiet alphabet of life. These ingredients do not prove life, but they suggest the recipe is here. You imagine the ocean below, warmed by tidal flexing, touched by minerals from a rocky core. It is not a stagnant place. It churns. It breathes. It may even feed. You think again of Earth's own hydrothermal vents, deep, black smokers, and white chimneys. There, in utter darkness, strange ecosystems thrive. Not because of sunlight, but because of chemistry. Microbes feast on hydrogen and sulfur. They are the base of food chains that rise in towers of alien beauty tube worms with red plumes, eyeless shrimp, gelatinous things that drift. If such life can exist here, could it not, perhaps, exist there? In Enceladus's ocean, you imagine similar vents. You picture the black stone ridges where mineral-rich fluids rise. In the silence of this underwater world, maybe warmth meets salt, and salt meets cell. Not all life needs to be large. Sometimes it is the smallest spark that tells the greatest truth. That we are not alone. Cassini found molecular hydrogen in the plumes, a hint that hydrothermal activity may be occurring on the ocean floor. It's like finding kindling beside a match. Hydrogen is food for microbes, just as it is on Earth. Not a declaration, but a murmur. Conditions are right. You imagine a droplet launched skyward from a vent, carried through a crack into space. It freezes dark, crystallized into a messenger. That drop lands on the nose of Cassini, and in it, a story is written in atoms. Maybe no life is in that droplet. Or maybe, just maybe, a single-celled Voyager came along for the ride. Unaware, it was leaving its world behind. The plumes continue, constant and calm. They feed Saturn's earring, scattering their particles across space. Enceladus becomes a moon with influence, a tiny body that leaves a trace. You feel something gentle in that. Some presence is found in persistence. As you hover near the surface, you notice the terrain. The South Pole is crisscrossed with features called tiger stripes. Long, dark fractures were the plumes. They pulse with warmth. Not warmth you'd feel with skin, but warmth that sings in infrared, that soft glow that tells of internal heat. The rest of the moon is smooth, almost eerily so. Few craters remain. It seems the surface remakes itself, hiding time beneath new layers of ice. This, too, tells you something. Enceladus is active. It is not a dead rock. It shifts and breathes and heals. It is geologically alive, and that raises a softer, deeper question. Could it be biologically alive too? Your thoughts trace the journey of the Cassini mission. You picture its looped orbits, its daring dives. In its final years, Cassini became bold. It flew straight through the plumes, again and again, taking samples, capturing data. It couldn't see the ocean, but it could smell its breath. And in that breath was promise. The readings showed unexpected complexity. Complex organics, larger than simple molecules. Compounds that may have been forged in deep chemical processes. You feel the significance of this not as noise, but as a husha kind of sacred silence. The universe does not shout when it reveals itself. Enceladus whispers, too. Through its plumes, it speaks to any who listen. It says, I am more than ice. I am more than cold. I hold oceans and warmth and mystery. Come closer, come gently. Ask, but do not demand. You imagine what it would be like to return, not just with flybys, but with descent. A lander, resting near the tiger stripes. Instruments that dip into the vapor, or perhaps even drill into the ice. Not aliens as fiction paints them, but the poetry of chemistry in motion. Maybe a cell, maybe a chain of carbon, maybe the signature of metabolism. And what would it mean? That Earth is not unique. That life, given the right conditions, arises as surely as frost on glass. That the cosmos is seeded not with silence, but with quiet songs. You breathe slowly, letting your thoughts swirl like plumes. You are not rushing toward answers. You are floating in wonder. That is where discovery begins, not in certainty, but in questions asked with reverence. Enceladus is small. You could walk across it in a few days, but its meaning stretches across time. It reminds you that life is not defined by surface or size, but by the dance between energy and matter. And where those two things meet, even beneath kilometers of ice, life may bloom. You let yourself imagine the impossible. Not just microbes, but evolution. What if Enceladus's ocean is older than all human history? What if life began there long before it did here? What stories would it tell if it could? What would it remember? Would it know the taste of hydrogen, the shelter of salt, the slow patience of geological time? You don't need to know. Wonder is enough. And still, the plumes rise. They curl like smoke, like breath on winter air. They are not declarations, but invitations. In their rise, you see a kind of hope, a promise that even in the coldest, most distant places, the universe is not empty. It moves, it grows, it tries. As you drift back from Enceladus, your mind still filled with vapor and starlight, you feel the path extend further, past Saturn now, toward the edge of the solar system, where another world waits, not a moon, but a giant of ice and mystery, Neptune, and one of its moons, Triton, captured, tilted. Strange, your thoughts begin to drift again, like particles caught in the stream of a faraway fountain. You wonder what secrets Triton holds, what warmth it hides beneath its frozen skin, and what strange history brought it into Neptune's care. The plumes of Enceladus fade behind you, but their message lingers. Even in silence, something may speak. Asterisk, asterisk, you float now near Neptune, far beyond the warmth of the inner solar system, where light is no longer golden, but pale and slow, more echo than glow. Here, everything moves in whispers. You see Triton circling backward, tilted, quiet, not born of Neptune, but caught, captured long ago in a dance that rewrote its sky. You drift beside it now, this moon wrapped in frozen nitrogen and soft pink haze, and still you feel the pulse of something alive, not on the surface, but deep below. Something warm in a place that should be cold. Not all warmth, you remember, comes from sunlight. Some warmth is born of movement, of moons tugged and turned by the giants they orbit. Beneath Triton's frozen crust, that same invisible hand is at work. Tidal forces Stretch it, squeeze it, stir its insides like thick dough in slow, steady kneading. With each pull from Neptune, Triton's heart shifts, and where rock rubs against rock, heat is born. Friction, ancient and patient, Clint, where there is heat, there may still be water liquid and hidden, protected from the void. You picture it now, an ocean beneath miles of ice, not frozen still, but stirred from within. Triton spins slowly, its axis tilted, its path peculiar. But these differences are not flaws. They are part of the recipe. They feed the rhythm. They help the tides. And the tides make warmth, and warmth makes hope. This kind of fire is not fast. It is not dramatic. It does not blaze or burst. It hums. It pulses. It breathes. And inside that breath, over centuries, over millennia, cracks form and heal. Pockets open and shift. Minerals dissolve. Water flows. And perhaps in those pockets, deep in the press of silence, life stirs. Not loudly, but slowly, persistently, enough to exist. You are not just watching now, you are imagining. What if, deep inside Triton, there are vents like underwater chimneys, spewing minerals into black water? What if, like on Earth, those minerals feed heat-loving microbes, creatures who've never seen the stars, but still belong to them? Creatures who survive, not because of light, but because of rhythm, because of tides, because of fire beneath ice. And the story widens. You begin to realize this is not Triton's secret alone. Europa, Enceladus, even moons farther still, each of them might keep oceans, and each of them might pulse with warmth. Earth taught us to look for warmth on the surface. But the universe whispers that warmth also lives within. That heat can be hidden and still be real. Tidal heating, you learn, is a kind of heartbeat. Moons don't just orbit, they stretch and relax. It is as if they breathe through stone. And this breath, this slow geological inhale and exhales, enough energy to melt what should be frozen. Ice turns to water. Water stays fluid. And where water lingers, life might wait. You think about how fragile this seems, and yet how persistent. How the cosmos does not shout, but rather nudges. Does not light every corner, but gives just enough spark for possibility. The science of this flexing rock and melting cores is complex, but the feeling is simple. The feeling is one of hope, of slowness, of patience. Life, if it is here, must be slow too, unhurried, adapted to silence and pressure and dark. You remember how, even on Earth, life clings to the deepest parts of the ocean, far from the sun. It feeds on heat and minerals, not on photosynthesis. It thrives near volcanic vents, blind but aware. What lives there does not need light. It needs warmth. It needs flow. And if that's true here, it might be true elsewhere. You wonder what it feels like to exist without ever knowing the surface. To be born, live, and die beneath an unbroken shell of ice. To never see stars, but to still be part of them. Maybe life on Triton or Enceladus or Europa isn't waiting to evolve upward, but sideways, outward, inward. Maybe it adapts not toward the light, but toward the rhythm. The thought is humbling. It reminds you that life is not always climbing toward complexity. Sometimes it survives by staying small, by mastering its place, not escaping it. And in that stillness, there is a kind of wisdom. The kind of wisdom only the deep can hold. You follow this idea further, past Triton now, to the idea itself. Tidal fire. The fire that doesn't burn, but warms. The fire that doesn't flare, but endures. And it changes the way you think of planets and moons. You stop seeing them as dead stones and begin to see them as breathing bodies, each with its own rhythm, each with its own way of holding heat, and suddenly the cosmos doesn't feel cold anymore. Even in the farthest places, warmth lingers. Even in the darkest corners, motion creates energy. Even under miles of silence, something may stir. Asterisk, asterisk, you drift now through a mental gallery of moons and distant worlds. Some small, some large, some cracked and cratered, some smooth and quiet. You picture them not as distant, but familiar. You imagine their hidden seas as siblings to Earth's deep ocean. And you feel the web between them, not just gravitational, but poetic. You remember that the Earth's own moon was once molten. That Earth, too, holds its own tidal secrets. The moon's pull still shapes our oceans. It stirs tides. It shifts rhythms. And so, the Earth listens to the sky. It always has. Triton, you realize, is part of this dance, not outside it, not alien, but connected. Its strange orbit, its backward spin, its likely captured history, these are not disqualifications. They are signs of a dynamic life, of being pulled in, of being changed. And change, after all, is what fire does. You think now of all the moons in the solar system, over 200 of them. How many hold ice? How many hold water? How many are warmed, not by sun, but by motion? The numbers rise. The possibilities multiply. You begin to feel a quiet truth settle over you. The conditions for life are not rare. They are scattered. They are subtle. And they are often hidden beneath crusts and shadows and time. Your breath slows. Your body feels heavier now, as if wrapped in the pull of a distant moon. You close your eyes and imagine that you are not on the surface of a world, but deep within it. A world that has never known light, but still moves, still pulses, still holds warmth in its center, like a sleeping ember. You let that warmth wash over you, not in flames, but in waves. You let the tides of thought carry you deeper, toward a place not yet seen, not yet proven, but possible. And as the stillness takes hold, you feel yourself soften into sleep. Your mind no longer reaching for stars, but curling inward, toward the fire that does not burn, the fire that only warms, the fire that waits. And in the last glow of thought, you wonder if heat can hide beneath ice, if life can pulse in the dark. Then what else might be alive, not beneath moons, but beyond? Beyond the edge of this solar system, beyond Neptune, beyond even Triton's tilted path. Perhaps warmth is not the exception. Perhaps silence is not empty. Perhaps life is not rare. Perhaps it only hides where we haven't yet learned to listen. You drift quietly now, deeper into the softness of thought. The warmth of hidden oceans lingers in your body, not as heat, but as a quiet pulse. You are far from light, but not far from wonder. You are beyond the reach of stars, yet held gently by the questions they leave behind. What does it mean, you wonder, to be alive in the dark? Silence wraps around you like a blanket. Not emptiness, but density. A fullness, a waiting. Not every form of life sings with voice or light. Some life is content to hum beneath ice, to whisper in molecules, to breathe in rhythms that take centuries to complete a single cycle. You close your eyes and drift lower, not upward now, but inward, into Earth's own silences, into what we already know, and yet still don't fully understand. You find yourself near Antarctica, floating above Lake Vostok, buried beneath nearly 4 kilometers of ice. No sun touches its surface. No breeze ripples its face. For thousands of years, perhaps millions, it has existed, untouched, locked beneath a continent of cold. And yet, we suspect it lives. Not in the way we often imagine, not with forests, or fish, or flowers, but in cells. In whispers of carbon. In extremophiles, life that does not run from silence, but grows in it. You picture them now, tiny bacteria, living beneath pressure that would crush your lungs, in water that never sees the sky. They eat minerals, or hydrogen, or sulfur. They live slowly, almost motionless, as if time itself thickens in the cold. Yet they endure, and they multiply, and they persist. Life, it seems, does not always need a sun to shine. Sometimes it only needs not to be destroyed. Your thoughts curl like steam above this buried lake. You remember that we've drilled here carefully, respectfully, wanting to understand, not disturb. And we found, even in samples from shallower, refrozen water, signs of activity. Not definitive proof, but the echo of metabolism, the shape of something that feeds, however slowly, in the dark. You imagine dipping your hand into those ancient waters, how strange it would feel. How familiar. Life, waiting patiently beneath our feet, like a breath we hadn't noticed we were holding. You think of other lakes beneath the ice Lake Willans, Lake Mercer, and the robotic submarines that might one day swim through there. Quiet corridors. Machines wrapped in silence, searching for life that does not announce itself. It's a reminder. The loudest things are not always the most alive. Sometimes it is the stillness that holds the most. The silence here is not frightening. It is rich, like fertile soil. You understand now that to look for life elsewhere, we must listen to the life we already know. To life on the edges. Life in the margins. Life that does not seek the light, but grows without it. You begin to think in new terms, not just habitable zones around stars, but habitable silences inside worlds. You drift from Antarctica to the ocean floor, deep, deep down, where the pressure is crushing and the sun never reaches. There, hydrothermal vents bloom like alien gardens, black smokers and white smokers, gushing mineral-rich water into the deep. Around them, life cling stew, worms, clams, strange bacteria that use chemical energy instead of sunlight. Chemosynthesis. You whisper the word to yourself, like a secret code for survival. Here, heat comes not from a sun, but from the Earth's own body, from the churning core beneath crust and mantle. The same tidal forces that warm Europa or Enceladus once fed these vent systems. You think, if life can flourish here, miles beneath the sea, why not beneath the icy crust of a moon? Your breath is slow now. You follow the trails of molecules through these vent ecosystems. You see how microbes form the base, feeding larger creatures who've never seen light. Some don't even have eyes. They don't need them. Their world is built on touch, on chemistry, on vibration, on rhythm. You feel yourself pulse with their rhythm. It is ancient, and it does not rush. You remember the brine pockets trapped in sea ice, tiny reservoirs of liquid salt water, kept from freezing by the same salts that make them so strange. Inside them, living things. Even in what we call frozen, nature has found a way to stay fluid, to stay possible. The phrase comes back again. Life is not rare, just shy, just deeply, beautifully patient. You drift upward slightly, but not toward space. Not yet. You rise into the atmosphere, where some of Earth's hardiest microbes ride dust and droplets. Bacteria found alive 30 kilometers high. Spores clinging. Two winds. Even here, in the cold, dry heights of the stratosphere, something holds on. Something floats and waits. Now you're thinking not just of extremophiles, but of resilience itself, of how many forms life can take. You recall tardigrades, tiny, plump, impossibly tough creatures, water bears. They survive desiccation, radiation, freezing, even space itself. We've sent them into orbit, and they've returned alive. They fold into stillness, into a form of suspended animation, then reawaken when moisture returns. You wonder how many worlds might hold such sleepers. Not dead, not thriving, just waiting, just listening, just curled into the long dream of possibility. You drift again toward the idea of panspermia, the notion that life might travel between planets, hidden in rocks or dust, carried by impacts, by collisions, by ancient wanderings. It sounds wild, but is it? We found meteorites from Mars on Earth. Some contain structures that look like fossilized bacteria. Not proof, but echoes, possibilities. Your thoughts circle back to silence, to the kind that holds secrets, not voids. Silence that does not deny life, but protects it. You begin to sense how much we have assumed life must shout to be heard. But maybe we just haven't listened closely enough. Maybe we've only been tuning in to the loud stations, missing the quieter channels that hum just beneath the noise. You think now of ice-covered exoplanets, those distant, wandering worlds far beyond our sun. Planets once dismissed as too cold, too far, too lifeless. But if warmth can come from inside, and if life does not need light, then what else becomes possible? What if oceans lie beneath every fourth or fifth icy shell? What if extremophiles are not exceptions, but the rule? You consider how we define life. often by what we know, carbon-based, water-dependent, replicating, evolving. But even here, on Earth, there are oddities, organisms that blur the line between life and chemistry. Viruses, prions, deep-sea archaea. What else might exist beyond that line, waiting for new definitions? And then there is Venus, once thought uninhabitable, now under new suspicion. Phosphine, gas in the clouds, may be myological, maybe not. But again, a reminder, science doesn't say never, it says not yet. Asterisk, you begin to feel a gentle shift. The silence that once felt cold now feels full, as if everything is holding its breath, as if life is not absent, but suspended. You feel suspended, too, between knowing and not knowing, between doubt and hope. You float back to Earth's deserts, places with no rain for years. And yet, under certain stones, tiny colonies live. In salt crystals, in cracks, in places to dry for what we'd once call life. But they live, and they wait for a drop, for a shift, for a shift, for time. You sense that life's greatest talent is not building, but waiting. Not speed, but patience. A patience beyond our own. One that does not fear a million years of stillness, because it knows that warmth always returns, that silence always ends, that somewhere, sometime, the right conditions will come. You think now of your own silence, the kind you carry inside, the kind you find in sleep, in stillness, in longing. The unspoken shape of things not yet known, like an unopened letter, like a buried lake, like an ocean beneath a moon dot. And so you drift in that quiet. You do not need to move quickly. Life does not hurry. It lingers. It learns to wait. Somewhere beyond Neptune, beyond even Triton, another kind of silence begins. A world that's not just dark, but tilted, captured, different. You feel the shape of its orbit calling you as your body rests and your breath slows. You feel the weight of these whispers, not loud, not clear, but certain. Of life, it is where life prepares to speak. You drift, still wrapped in the hush of silence. Not the silence of empty places, but the one shaped by potential. The kind that holds its breath before speaking. The kind that hums softly beneath the weight of stars. Your thoughts rise from Earth's deep lakes and frozen moons. They stretch outward again, far beyond Neptune now, into the realm of exoplanets. The planets that orbit suns not your own. Places you've never touched, but somehow still imagine. And among them, one strange kind begins to form in your mind. Not spinning like Earth, not turning evenly, but stuck, half in daylight, half in night. These are tidally locked worlds, planets that show only one face to their star, like the moon to Earth, always gazing from the same side. One hemisphere scorched in endless day, the other frozen in perpetual night. But between them, a place neither bright nor dark, there is something else, a thin ring of eternal dusk, a twilight belt. And in that narrow band, just perhaps, life can breathe. You float closer in your imagination now, past the heat-blasted lands that shimmer like metal under a relentless sun. Past the frigid plains, where frost never melts, where even shadows seem frozen in place. You settle in that in-between place, the region called the Terminator. Not a violent name here, but a gentle threshold. The border where extremes meet and soften. Where warmth from one side leans into the cold of the other. Endlessly distributing energy, stirring skies, and maybe, just maybe, keeping water in liquid form. Scientists call them eyeball planets. From space, they resemble a staring eye. The hot side glowing like a pupil. The icy hemisphere, blank and pale. The habitable ring forming a delicate iris. You imagine that iris now. Not a perfect circle, but a living zone. A possible sea beneath a cracked shell of ice, warmed from beneath by the same tidal forces that stir Enceladus and Europa. And above it, a sky tinged in permanent twilight. Never noon, never midnight. Just a forever evening, like the first minutes of sleep. It is strange to think of oceans like this, not ringed by continents, not swept by sunlight, but Earth's own oceans hold clues. In our polar regions, beneath the sea ice, life thrives in cold, dim water. Microbes feed on minerals, not sunlight. Whole ecosystems hum quietly in places no human eyes have ever seen. So why not here, on this distant, dust-capped planet? You imagine the ocean beneath the twilight ring. It breathes in slow pulses, stirred by geothermal vents below. Its surface is capped by ice, translucent in places, cloudy in others. Beneath that lid, water moves in graceful arcs. Maybe not in waves like on Earth, but in circulations, convection currents, driven by subtle gradients of heat. You picture single-celled organisms drifting there, catching chemical whispers in the water. Maybe forming colonies. Maybe evolving. No sun to guide them. No eyes to see. But life, still. Even the atmosphere might help. If the planet has a thick enough sky, one rich in greenhouse gases, it could help even out the extremes. Wind might carry warmth from day into night. Storms might spiral across the twilight band, stirring clouds, mixing elements. And beneath it all, that ocean would listen, waiting, catching nutrients that fall like soft rain from above. A delicate balance born from a tilted dance between light and dark. This idea, though fantastical, is not just dream stuff. Astronomers have already found planets like these. Planets orbiting red dwarf stars, small, cool, but long-lived. The kind of stars that burn for trillions of years. Many of their planets lie close enough to be tidally locked. Planets like Proxima Centauri b, orbiting the nearest star to the Sun, or TRAPPIST-1e, part of a tightly packed system where 7 worlds orbit a dim red star. At least 3 of them are in the habitable zone. Not too hot, not too cold, just right. If they are tidally locked, and they might be, then they, too, may carry oceans in twilight. You picture them now. Each world spinning not with a daily rhythm, but orbiting slowly around their small star. The star doesn't rise or set. It just hangs in place, fixed in the sky, like a lantern on a string. On the day side, the air may boil. On the night side, ice may climb miles high. But in between, that whisper of gold light, the sky might glow with gentle hues, enough for chemistry, enough for warmth, enough, perhaps, for breath. Not all life needs light, as you now know. Chapter by chapter, you've met its messengers. The microbes beneath Europa. The bacteria in Earth's sealed Antarctic lakes. The invisible guests of Enceladus drifting through saltwater jets. Life adapts. It waits. It changes its rules. On an eyeball planet, it might do the same, clinging to thermal vents, feeding on minerals, building membranes that flex in the push and pull of tides. You do not need lush forests or sparkling reefs to imagine life. You only need the right conditions and enough time. And these stars, the small red dwarfs, give more time than almost any others. The story of these planets is a story of patience, of endurance, the kind that outlives bursts of brightness, the kind that favors the steady, the simple, the slow. You wonder what it would feel like to live in a world without morning or evening, where the sun never moves, where shadow never shifts. Would time feel different there? Would sleep come like a rhythm of the tides? Would waking be a matter of temperature, not light? Perhaps creatures in that place would sleep not daily, but seasonally, or in cycles you've never named. Perhaps they would not see, but sense, reading chemical trails in water, listening to pressure, heat, or electric signals. Perhaps their evolution would not favor speed, but memory. Not motion, but structure. Forms that endure, that remember ancient currents, that whisper stories in the mineral folds of their cells. And, if such creatures exist, not now, but someday, how would we know? Their world is far, their light faint. We cannot yet see oceans beneath their ice, or track their winds with certainty. But even here, Earth helps. Instruments like the James Webb Space Telescope now study the atmospheres of such planets. They look for signs, water vapor, methane, oxygen. Not proof, but hints, footprints in the dark. Someday, we may detect those molecules in the air of a tidally locked world. Someday, we may listen and hear the slow rhythm of that ocean's breath. The wonder, you realize, is not just in the details. It is in the permission to imagine. To take what you know about ice, about heat, about life, and stretch it, to see how far those truths can reach. Science is not just a collection of answers. It is a language for asking new kinds of questions. And so you ask, if life can exist in twilight, if warmth can linger in stillness, then what else have we overlooked? What else lies in the cracks between extremes? You let your breath slow, matching the imagined tides of that ocean. You picture it again, the belt of water encircling the eyeball planet, like a necklace. A seam of possibility stitched through frost and fire. There life might form, might wait, might thrive without ever seeing a sunrise or sunset. And, as your thoughts rise gently, like mist from that alien sea, you begin to wonder what comes next. You've wandered icy moons. You've imagined oceans beneath still skies. You've listened to heat that comes not from stars, but from within. But now, another question begins to form. If so many places might hold life, why haven't we heard it? Why, in all this vastness, does the universe remain so quiet? You turn, softly, toward that question, not in fear, but in calm curiosity. Question, not of absence, but of timing, of distance, of listening. You feel the pull of that mystery as you begin to drift again. Not downward now, but inward, toward a place where science and silence meet. Toward something older, deeper, and far stranger than stars. And, as your breath softens, you feel the edge of that next idea. Not a planet this time, not a moon or belt of twilight, a paradox, a cosmic riddle that has haunted minds for decades. You do not run from it. You float toward it, into the quiet heart of the question itself. Where is everyone? Asterisk, asterisk, you feel yourself drifting still, carried by the lingering hush of unanswered questions. The oceans in twilight, the hidden fires beneath eyes, they've shown you that life may breathe where we least expect it. But now, your journey lifts again higher and farther into a dance of faint lights and flickers. You drift toward the Kepler Space Telescope, that quiet watcher launched by human hope. Trained to watch over a patch of sky, only a fraction of the moon's width, but destined to change our sense of place. Kepler didn't seek radio signals or distant beacons. It watched stars, patient and steady, waiting for the smallest Dominga planet passing in front, a shadow moving across light. Each tiny dip was a whisper, and Kepler learned to listen. It saw thousands of such eclipses, and with each one, our map of distant worlds grew richer. Planets became dancers, small, silent, graceful, waltzing around suns unknown. You imagine the telescope, perched above Earth in quiet orbit, its sensors calibrated to detect fluctuations no larger than a grain of sand passing before a distant lantern. It did not blink, it did not falter, it recorded, and recorded, and recorded. And what it revealed was astonishing. The cosmos is crowded, at first. The list felt alien. Hot Jupiters skimming stellar surfaces, worlds tidally locked, scorching by day and freezing by night. But soon came the more intriguing fine super-Earths, and mini-Neptunes, planets with sizes between Earth and Neptune. And among them, a few, particularly whispered, Kepler 62e and Kepler 62f. Their names sound like applause in your mind. Kepler 62e, Kepler 62, F2 planets orbiting a star smaller and cooler than our Sun, nestled about 1,200 light-years away in the constellation Lyra. You float toward them. You picture their star, swelling red and soft, its light, amber and easy, and you wonder, what are they like? Kepler 62e lives nearer its star, in a gentle warmth that might allow surface water warm enough for oceans, but not so hot as to boil them away. Its twin, Kepler 62f, moves farther out, colder, but perhaps carrying its own secretin ocean, primed by internal heat, insulated by a thick atmosphere. Together, they form a promise that habitable worlds might come in more shapes than one. You imagine sailing across their season knot with a ship, but in thoughts, carried by radiation and spectral lines. For now, we cannot visit. We can only infer. We measure the dip in starlight. We calculate its size and orbit. We model its atmosphere. We dream of oceans hidden beneath unknown skies. Even that process feels like an act of intimacy. Science, done well, is a form of listening. Kepler listened to starlight. You listen now to the numbers, the models, the possibilities. If Kepler 62f has an atmosphere rich in greenhouse gases, carbon dioxide, perhaps methanate might trap enough heat to keep surface water stable. If it has water, and water is liquid, and if it persists, then you imagine life. Soft and small, like budding DNA strands assembling in gentle pools. You think of your own world, of maps drawn by terrestrial explorers, and realize these Kepler worlds are still outlines, not yet filled in. But outlines matter. They offer direction. They invite imagination. They tell you, these places exist. They carry conditions. They are not Earth, but they are not lifeless either. They are participants in a cosmic dance you've only begun to hear, and the numbers support it. Statistical surveys of Kepler's data suggest that for every 8 dwarf stars, perhaps 2 or 3 Earth-sized planets exist in habitable zones. That means billions of them just in our galaxy. Even if only a fraction carry oceans, the count remains staggering. You close your eyes, picturing ribbons of possibility weaving through space. You see the Kepler telescope's data clouds swirling with candidate worlds, each waiting for confirmation. Some will fall away, some will surprise, some will live up to their promise. And you, a quiet voyager, feel connected to this cosmic census. You think again of Kepler 62 East how its placement near the inner edge of its star's habitable zone could mean a temperate world. And you think of Kepler 62 E's outer edge, perhaps glaciated, but warmed from within, or by a thick atmosphere. You imagine two worlds in tandem, one possibly blue, one possibly white with ice, yet both breathing with heat and light and shadow. You wonder about the clouds. Planets may be covered in vapor, reflecting their stars like silken armor, or they may hold no clouds, revealing clear skies with permanent daylight or night. In either case, oceans could flow gently upon their surfaces. And where oceans flow, life may stir. You remember how silences before held marine worlds under ice or deep in darkness. Now you imagine open sky oceans, still soft-spoken, still hidden. You think, perhaps, Kepler 62 E's waters lap on shores we cannot name, under skies tinted red. Perhaps Kepler 62f's seas bubble under clouds, lit by auroras from stellar winds. These images do not feel distant, they feel immediate. You are not just reading about graphs, you are sighting on worlds. You are touching them with mind and heart. They are not Earth, but they are kin. You wonder what kind of life might evolve there. On Kepler 62e, plants, if they exist, might be colored black to absorb more of the dim star's light. Microbes might live in acidic pools near hydrothermal vents. On Kepler 62f, in deeper, icier waters, fish-like life might drift beneath ice shelves, warmed from below. They may never see stars, but they are as alive as you. These thoughts fill your mind gently, like waves lapping at an unseen shore. You feel a soft expansion in your chest, a hope, a patience born of statistical possibility, not certainty, but invitation. As your journey continues, another thought emerges. Kepler's mission was not just detection, it brought humility. It told us Earth is not the only stage. The galaxy carries cycles of planet formation. Systems form and evolve. Stars live and die. And in their midst, worlds form. And some of them, maybe many, form oceans. You trace the dance of Kepler's dataset. You feel gratitude for its vigilance, for years of staring, of counting eclipses, of capturing periodic dimming. You feel gratitude for every mission that followed K2, TESS, JWS, T, each one a kind of expansion of the telescope's whisper. You realize you are part of that expansion. Your attention, your care, your dreaming, it matters. When we imagine these worlds tenderly, we teach ourselves to hold to hope. We remind ourselves that the universe, larger than our fears. You float now. Sense drifting back to Kepler 62e and 62f. They have orbits of 122 and 267. Days slow compared to Earth's 365, but regular as breathing. They dance in tune with their star, and that dance sustains warmth, and warmth sustains oceans, and oceans, maybe life. You think of the silence, not absence, but waiting. Kepler brought names to that waiting. It whispered back through light curves. It gave coordinates to hope. And you, in turn, whisper this hope outward to yourself, to the universe, to the unknown, not in that breath. You feel your mind settle. The question you carried in your heart softens. Where is everyone? Now, new answers appear. Perhaps they don't shine like beacons. Perhaps they move like dancers in dim halls, waiting for a partner. Perhaps they breathe softly beneath shells of ice. Perhaps they drift in oceans of shadow. Perhaps they sing. But we have yet to tune our ears to their music. You let that thought float, not final, but open. You feel ready for the next chapter, a place where light itself becomes a tool, where we reach out, where we listen with new instruments, where we ask, what signs might life send across the gulf? You drift gently now toward that next question. How do we listen? What instruments do we need? What words does the universe use when it speaks? And so, softly, you begin that turn into the chapter to come. Asterisk, asterisk, in that breath, you feel your mind settle. The question you carried in your heart softens. Where is everyone? Now, new answers appear. Perhaps they don't shine like beacons. Perhaps they move like dancers in dim halls, waiting for a partner. Perhaps they breathe softly beneath shells of ice. Perhaps they drift in oceans of shadow. Perhaps they sing. But we have yet to tune our ears to their music. You let that thought float. Not final, but open. You feel ready for the next chapter, A place where light itself becomes a tool, where we reach out, where we listen with new instruments, where we ask, what signs might life send across the gulf? You drift gently now toward that next question. How do we listen? What instruments do we need? What words does the universe use when it speaks? And so, softly, you begin that turn into the chapter to come. But before sound, before signal, before translation, there is chemistry. There is liquid. Not the kind you sip from a glass or wash from your skin. Not the warmth that steams in sunlight or ripples in wind. This is different. This, alien water. You enter a world where cold is not the enemy and where ice is not the end. You drift through the dark and you feel something moving beneath the crust of reason. A strange sort of fluidity. A softness hiding in extremes. Not all oceans are blue. Not all are made of pure HO. Some are laced with ammonia. Slippery and sharp, lowering the freezing point until liquid can survive in temperatures you'd think too brutal. Some are saturated with salts, magnesiums, sodium, chlorine molecules, dancing in ionic patterns that keep the water from turning to glass. Some are slick with compounds that, on Earth, would be poison. Methanol, ethylene, glycol, hydrogen sulfide. But out here, in the silence between stars, they become antifreeze for life. You imagine oceans that do not freeze because they have changed their recipe. Not water as you know it, but water nonetheless. You let yourself flow into this thought. Imagine Europa's subsurface sea, not pure and clean like a glacier's melt, but murky, mineral-rich, full of strange flavors and textures. You think of Enceladus, its jets spraying salt and silica, signs of a salty ocean grinding against rock. You remember the plumes, the ice grains carrying whispers of complex organics. These are not accidental oceans. They are places with chemistry in motion, with energy gradients, with nutrients, with time. You picture something drifting in that liquid, not a fish, not a swimmer with eyes and gills, but perhaps a membrane, a sac, a pouch of something self-contained, flexible, responsive. Something that wavers with changes in temperature or currents or chemistry. Perhaps it pulses once, gently, and then again. Not fast, not eager, but steady. And perhaps within that slow rhythm is a kind of knowing, a kind of being. Life, not as animation, but as persistence. And you remember Earth, not the bright forests or teeming reefs, but the hidden places. Beneath kilometers of Antarctic ice, Lake Vostok slumbers in total darkness, sealed off for millions of years. And still something lives. Bacteria, strange, slow, metabolizing the rocks and gases that percolate beneath. No sunlight, no plants, just chemistry, just patience. There are microbes in the Arctic brine channels, in the permafrost, in hydrothermal vents at the bottom of our oceans. They thrive in scalding temperatures and in crushing pressure. Endure acid and salt and radiation. They show us one thing again and again. Life is not fragile. Life is adaptable. Life is experimental. So you imagine an experiment far from Earth, an ocean with ammonia instead of water, A cell membrane, made not of lipids, but of something else, something that flexes in methane. A kind of metabolism that uses not oxygen, but sulfur. You don't need to know all the pieces. You only need to ask, is it possible? And the science answers, softly, yes. Chemists have modeled alien solvents. Biologists have sketched out alternate metabolisms. Astrobiologists have dreamed of life in cryogenic seas. Titan with its methane rivers. Pluto with its possible ammonia oceans. Triton with its nitrogen frost. You begin to see the pattern. Cold does not forbid life. Okay? It only changes the rules. And so you dive deeper into metaphor. If Earth is a warm poem, maybe these worlds are haiku-shored, quiet, condensed. If Earth sings in choruses of color and movement, maybe these planets hum in tones we've never heard. Maybe their rhythm is slower. Maybe their dance is gentler. But still, there is motion. There is chemistry. There is potential. You let that possibility wrap around you like water itself, molecular, mutable, soft. You remember that water is a shapeshifter. Solid, liquid, vapor. And even on Earth, life has followed it into each of these forms. Bacteria drift in clouds. Algae sleep in ice. Archaea squirm in boiling water. It is not a stretch, then, to believe that on another world, life follows not our blueprint, but the logic of its own surroundings. You imagine a tide pool on a distant exoplanet. It's not blue, but lilac. Its shores are crystals, not sand. The waves are syrupy, thicker than anything you've touched. The creatures inside are soft-bellied, membrane-bound, drifting like petals. They do not move quickly. They do not sparkle. But they exist. And when the chemical balance is right, they divide. When energy surges through the medium, they shift. And perhaps, with time, they evolve. Not upward, not toward anything in particular, but outward, in complexity, in balance, in grace. And again, you remember Earth not in its present, but in its past. 4 billion years ago, our own oceans were strange, acidic, iron-rich, oxygen-free. The sky was orange. The continents were bare. And yet, life emerged. RNA strands tangled in warm puddles, tensile walls. Lipids formed accidental bubbles. Proteins misfolded and tried again. It was not instant. It was not clean. But it was inevitable, perhaps. The chemistry was generous. The conditions were kind. And from that soup came everything. So why not elsewhere? Why not again? Why not in the dark? Why not in cold? You let these questions rise like thermal currents in a hidden sea. They do not demand answers. They only invite reflection. What else is liquid, even in the cold? What else flows, even when light is gone? You think of the human heart. Warm, yes, but also metaphorical. A place where love persists through grief, where memory pulses through silence, where longing flows without direction. You think of the mind, not just as a thinking machine, but as a fluid space. Ideas form, dissolve, reform. Emotion trickles between neurons. Connection arcs across the synaptic gap like a current. Perhaps this too, is a kind of chemistry. Perhaps this, too, is a kind of life. You feel yourself softening. You let your breath become like the alien ocean, slow, filled with strange elements. You let your thoughts become flexible, like cells suspended in unknown solvents. You are not trying to solve a problem now. You are listening. You are letting the idea of life expand. You imagine the tools that might detect such life spectrometers, sniffing molecules in far-off atmospheres, landers melting through ice to taste the sea, telescopes watching for flickers of biosignature gases, methane, oxygen, dimethyl sulfide. And you think, the more we look, the more we must be willing to see differently. Not only what we expect, but what surprises. Not only what's familiar, but what is strange and shy, you begin to understand. The key is not just in the liquid, but in our willingness to redefine what life means. Not metabolism as we know it, not replication in the standard way, but persistence, complexity, pattern, response. A system that reacts to its world, adapts, sustains, and perhaps remembers. And so, slowly, you float upward again from this ocean of thought. Not to leave it behind, but to carry its quiet message with you. You are not alone in your capacity to wonder. The universe, too, is capable of creation. It has built planets with frozen skies and melted cores. It has designed solvents beyond your chemistry set. It has played with temperature and pressure like brushstrokes. And perhaps, in some corner, it has painted something alive. You let your mind drift now toward that next horizon. The chapter ahead, where light returns, not from stars, but from tools. Where we turn our instruments toward the darkness and listen. Where we wait for signals, patterns, pulses, rhythms, for signs that something is reaching back. The cold is not absence, it is backdrop. The silence is not blankness, it is potential. The liquid is not comfort, it is key. And in this slow realization, you exhale gently, your thoughts curling like mist from an unseen ocean. Not to end, but to continue, into the next mystery, into the next light. Asterisk, you rise from the echo of liquid beneath ice, carrying its soft lessons in your chest. You follow a new thread. Now, one threaded through silence, but by signal, we have dreamed of life reaching out, of worlds whispering their existence to us across the void. And so, we listen. We send our own signals. We send radio pulses, laser flashes, and mechanical probes. We watch the cosmos with instruments attuned to tremors, heat, chemistry. Not because we expect hollering, but because we hope to catch a breath. Meanwhile, our telescopes peer into atmospheres, reading their chemistry like tea leaves. Oxygen and methane dancing together in disequilibrium. Water vapors, soft glow. Carbon dioxide thickening in layers. These are not voices, but footprints. Signs of processes that may be alive. Kepler and Tess gave us worlds. Soon, the James Webb Space Telescope and others will bring us their atmospheres. They may show us not a planet, but a planet breathing. You think about winter nights on Earth, standing outside and listening. Silence surrounds you. Sometimes you need only time, attentiveness, waiting without expectation. Perhaps the same is true in space. Perhaps we simply haven't listened long enough, or in the right way. You remember the words of a radio astronomer. We are the long now. That echo hums in you. It is patience, it is vigilance, and it carries a calm reassurance. We are only at the beginning of listening. Closer to home, our probes listen in other ways. On Mars, seismometers feel the planet's heartbeat tremors that tell of shifting stone. On Europa, planned missions will sense subtle changes in ice, geysers bursting beneath. On Titan, we send drones to listen to wind, to floats on methane lakes. These tools use not radios, but touch. They tune into the groan of crusts, the tremor of tides, the chemistry of breathing seas. Each instrument is a form of listening. Not the kind you hear with ears, but the kind you feel with sensors. It is translation, converting touch, chemistry, light, into information we can understand. And with each new sense we develop, we open a new way to hear life. You imagine a future mission to Enceladus that lands near a plume, dialing in to its jet's rhythm. A lander that vibrates with each cry of water. A probe beneath Europa's ice, scanning for heat anomalies, pulses of salts, organic fingerprints. You imagine listening not just for life, but for patterns, metabolic fluctuations, seasonal cycles, synchronous pulses matched to tidal forces. Back in orbit, radio telescopes spread across Earth form arrays, catching whispers and timing them. Optical telescopes detect flashes, maybe a spotlight from an intelligent source, maybe a natural flare. Lasers sweep arcs across the sky, probing for who's there. It's all quiet so far. But you understand now, quiet tonight is not forever. You think of how sound travels underwater, slow, shaped by pressure and density. In deep oceans, sounds you barely notice tell of life. The flutter of fins, the creak of ice, the hum of hydrothermal output. Our oceans are noisy in ways we once ignored. But as you've listened longer, with hydrophones, with sensors, you discovered whales and earthquakes, vessels and volcanoes. Imagine what we might hear on alien worlds. Not the same sounds, but analogous ones. A pulse of gas through a plume, a crack in an ice shelf, a change in background heat. Everything you've learned so far about liquid in the cold, about hidden oceans, about icy moons and twilight belts, changes how you listen. You do not expect signals that sound like us. You expect signals that sound like those places. Signals with slow pulses, irregular beats, subtle chemistry. You let your mind drift to thought experiments. A plume of Enceladus, thick with organics, with heat surging from below. Could a machine detect a transient signature, a burst of complex molecules, a change in jet composition? Could we calibrate detectors at just the right frequency to pick up biological turbulence? Or, on Europa, the ice shell creaks, tides tug at cracks. A sensor picks up the frequency. It registers an anomaly, out the cry of an organism, but the rhythm of energy. And that rhythm hints at something living, a heat source maintained by friction and chemistry, and on an eyeball planet, the Terminator belt is exposed to twilight. The atmosphere cycles, clouds form, dissolve. Infrared telescopes detect variations in heat. The data shows seasonal cycles. Interpreted, they hint at circulation driven by oceans. The ocean hints at heat. Heat hints at possible life. These are all indirect, but they are steps forward. Each one is a clue dot, and really, that's what listening is. It's not asking for a shout, it's following a thread. It's watching for rhythms. It's being open to signs that are quiet, faint, and different from ourselves. Tonight, as you drift between dreams, you carry this mode of listening inside you. You understand that galaxies hum in frequencies beyond your ears, that planets breathe in chemistry, in microcurrents, in subtle warmth, that ice can muffle a voice, but heat will still leak, that oceans do not sing, but they resonate, that life may speak in tremors, in tides, in chemical cycles. Your breath slows. The world around you dims. Instruments gather data. Radio waves drift across space. Telescopes scan. Probes wait. And you, listening with your mind, feel hopeful. Perhaps one day, the silence will break. Not in a thunderous call, but in a ripple. A nuance, a moment that bends the pattern. A shift so gentle that our instruments need tuning. Until then, you wait. And you listen. Asterisk, asterisk. You return, not with a crash or a flare, but with the hush of recognition. Earth rises before you, familiar, but not the same. You have wandered so far, imagined so deeply, that even this home now seems like a memory reborn. The blues of its oceans shine softer, not because they have dimmed, but because your eyes have changed. You see now, not just a world, but a pattern. A prototype, a whisper of something the universe may have repeated. You drift downward, slowly, through atmosphere, through cloud, through time. You land, not in cities or noise, but in the ancient places, hidden valleys. Salt-crusted deserts, high-altitude lakes sealed in ice. You walk gently across permafrost, where microbial life sleeps through centuries. You pause by volcanic vents, where strange creatures flicker in chemical light. And all around you, the silence is full. You know now how to listen. In the dark caves of Antarctica, life clings to mineral walls. It breathes sulfur and iron, not oxygen. It survives not through abundance, but by folding into itself, becoming small, still, precise. You kneel and place a hand on the frozen stone, not to take, not to study, but to feel, and you do. A low rhythm, a pulse so faint it might be imagined, but it isn't. You are no longer a stranger to subtle signs. You move deeper underground. In Lake Vostok, hidden beneath more than 2 miles of Antarctic ice, ancient waters have waited undisturbed for over 15 million years. Scientists drill with the gentleness of surgeons, worried that even contact might contaminate what rests below. And what might rest there? Not schools of fish or coral cities, but perhaps bacteria shaped by pressures and temperatures no surface creature could endure. Perhaps life that never knew sunlight, but learned, instead, to read heat. You think of Enceladus, of Europa, of Triton, of those twilight belts on one-sided planets. You think of all those dark oceans and sealed lakes. They are not science fiction anymore. Earth has already written that chapter. You stand at the edge of a hydrothermal vent deep beneath Earth's seas, imagining it through the eyes of a submersible. Around it, tube worms stretch in slow motion. Blind shrimp cluster near sulfur plumes. Their world is not a lesser world. It is not waiting to evolve into something else. It is complete, self-sufficient, alive. And this is what strikes you now. Earth is not unusual. Earth is not rare. Earth is a song we heard first, but not the only one written. Its melody plays in other scales, in other keys, in atmospheres thick with methane or underskins of ammonia slush. But the pattern, the rhythm, that is what echoes life, it seems, is a composer that loves variation. You walk through a rainforest next, thick with mist and vine, and hear another kind of language, not just the calls of birds or the rustle of leaves, but the chemical conversations of plants, how trees warn each other of insects, how roots whisper through networks of fungi. It is intelligence, not loud or linear, but woven into place. You remember now, intelligence does not require cities. It does not require hands. It does not require eyes. It only requires complexity, response, memory, and these the forest has. In abundance, you lie back beneath the canopy and stare upward. You do not need to go to space to find alien life. Some of it walks past you every day, unnoticed. The blind cavefish with no need for vision. The tardigrade sleeping for decades in the soil. The microbe surviving in the vacuum of space. Each is a letter in Earth's long, patient sentence. You feel now the unity of it, the thread running through all things that live. It is not DNA alone. It is not carbon alone. It is persistence, adaptability, the ability to balance between chaos and order. You realize something gentle, something profound. Earth is a mirror the universe holds up to itself. Maybe the universe is not silent. Maybe it is simply slow. Life does not rush. It waits. It tries. It begins again. Like moss spreading across stone. Like heat pooling beneath an icy moon. Like radio waves spiraling outward from an old satellite. Waiting for anyone to notice. You rise from the forest and move now across dry places, salt flats, cracks in the desert floor. Here, too, life waits. In spores, in halophiles, in creatures so small they pass through filters, yet hold the memory of ancient oceans. You are surrounded by evidence, by echoes, not just of Earth's past, but of other possible Earths. You think again of the planets Kepler saw, distant suns flickering with potential. You think of Proxima b, of Ross 128b, of the thousands of rocky candidates spinning quietly in habitable zones. And now you ask the question, not with fear, but with curiosity. If life is here, and life is possible elsewhere, Then, what will it look like? Not just physically, but emotionally. What will it know? What will it value? Will it understand time the way we do? Will it mourn? Will it hope? Will it have stories? You smile gently. Because this, too, is life's signature need to tell. Not always in words, sometimes in pattern, in art, in rhythm, but always a reaching out. You return again to Earth's oceans, to coral reefs and whale songs, to the way octopuses solve puzzles and birds craft tools. Intelligence, you see now, is not a mountain with one peak. It is a field, wide and varied. There are many ways to be aware, many ways to matter. You listen to Earth's memory in every drop of water, in every gust of wind. It is a living archive, and perhaps other planets are libraries, too. Perhaps Ganymede holds a paragraph of life. Perhaps Enceladus whispers in haiku. Perhaps some exoplanet, 100 light-years away, spins with a novel in its crust and finished, but stirring. You walk beside a river and watch it split around rocks. This is how life moves, isn't it? Not in straight lines, not with guarantees, but with flow. It bends, it divides, it reforms. Always adapting. Earth's story is not finished. And neither is the universe's. You are only reading a chapter, a page, but already you see the theme. Life tries. That is its gift. That is its poetry. And now, as evening falls across the land, you sit in stillness. You remember all the places you've imagined, all the worlds you've visited in thought, all the waters you've dreamed beneath. And you realize the most alien place is often the most familiar one. Seen, a new Earth is a teacher. Earth is a translation. If we ever find life beyond, we will understand it, not because it resembles us, but because Earth has taught us how to see difference as meaning, how to find kinship in contrast. The sky darkens, stars bloom, and you look upward once more. This time, not to escape, but to reflect. Earth is not an island. It is a beginning. Maybe the silence is not loneliness. Maybe it's listening. Maybe we're not alone. We're just early. Maybe life is not a miracle, but a tendency. You breathe in the night air and feel the weight of Earth beneath you. Its warmth, its history, its hidden corners still unexplored. You understand now that this planet is not the center of the story, but it is part of the sentence. And that is enough. You lie down on the grass, the same grass walked by ancestors, who also looked up, who also wondered, who also hoped. The stars say nothing, and yet they tell you everything. You close your eyes, and you dream of patterns, repeating, of a universe that remembers, of life that begins again and again, in frost, in silence. Asterisk, asterisk, you lie, memory. You never knew you had. The blades of grass beneath your fingertips are cool, damp with a night dew that seems to whisper of time. Time not as a ticking clock, but as a rhythm, slow, breath-like, older than words. Above, the stars remain silent, but not empty. No, never empty. You have learned by now that silence is not absence. Silence is a kind of language. A pause in a sentence too vast to hear all at once. You think of Earth as one planet in 1,000 million, one stanza in an epic poem still unfolding. And you begin to wonder again, with that slow, patient curiosity you've cultivated across this journey, if life is so likely, so ready to bloom in darkness, in cold, in strangeness, then where is everyone? It is not a new question. You do not own it. It is the echo of Enrico Fermi's quiet remark at lunch in 1950, that now drifts through generations like a feather in the wind. Where is everybody? If life is common, if stars have planets, if planets have oceans, if oceans have chemistry, then surely, somewhere, someone else has also wondered, also built, also looked up. But the sky is so very quiet, you drift into that question like fog. You do not rush toward an answer. Instead, you let the paradox settle around you, soft, unresolved, like a lullaby that never quite ends. This is the Fermi paradox, but it is also your paradox. Yours to feel, not just solve. Maybe life is rare. A freak occurrence, a perfect storm that brewed once and never again. But you hesitate. You remember extremophiles. You remember buried oceans and chemical dances that continue without light. You remember Earth's own beginnings, not in grandeur, but in mud, in hydrothermal breath, in patience. So no, you don't believe it is rare. Not any more. Then maybe life is common, but fragile. Easy to spark, but easier still to extinguish. Maybe civilizations flare up like lightning bugs, glowing briefly, blinking once, and fading before another can respond. Maybe the stars are littered with the ruins of songs that never found harmonies. And if so, you think, maybe we are not the first. Maybe just the most recent voice in an unfinished chorus. Or perhaps it is not about rarity, not about timing. Perhaps the silence is not failure, but choice. You sit up in the grass, and the earth holds you still. Around you, the night is full of unseen life, insects moving, leaves breathing, roots growing in silence. You realize something small but immense. Life doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't always wish to be found. Maybe that is true beyond Earth too. What if life out there is quiet, not because it is shy or small, but because it is wise? You think of civilizations that could be older than your own by millions of years. Not just ahead in technology, but ahead in philosophy, in patience, in restraint. Maybe they once reached out, as we do, sent signals, scanned the skies, built great machines that blinked through space. And maybe, in time, they realized that noise, that power, doesn't need to shine. That listening is greater than shouting. And so, they stopped transmitting. They stopped looking outward and began to look inward. Not in fear, not in hiding, but in reverence. Maybe silence is not a void, but a form of respect. Asterisk, asterisk, you look again at the stars. Not as points of failure, but as unopened doors. Maybe no one answers because the universe is still waiting for us to ask the right question. Maybe the question isn't, where is everyone? But rather, Are we ready to be part of the conversation? You imagine an intelligence watching Earth, not from malice or disinterest, but from kindness. A watchful quiet, awaiting. The way a parent might wait for a child to learn their own name before saying it aloud. And maybe we are still learning. You think of how young our technology is. Just a few decades of radio, a few robotic scouts, a telescope here and there. We are toddlers on the cosmic scale, barely upright, barely speaking. If the universe is a cathedral, then we've only just stepped through the doorway, whispering to hear our own echoes. And yet, you feel awe, because even in our smallness, we reach. We send gold records on silver discs. We beam messages encoded in mathematics. We study atmospheres, light years away for chemical fingerprints of life. We search not just for voices, but for warmth, for rhythm, for breath. We send questions into the dark and call it science, but perhaps it is also something more tender. Perhaps it is faith. Faith not in any doctrine, but in the possibility that we are not alone, that the story is still being written, that somewhere, someone, or something has also looked up, and so you wonder, softly, if they are out there. What would they be like? Maybe not carbon-based, not bipedal, not bound by vision or air. Maybe their thoughts ripple like fields of magnetism. Maybe they bloom instead of speak. Maybe they remember in the structure of crystal or in the scent of wind. Maybe their science is not built in tools, but in harmony, in finding balance with their world instead of shaping it. And maybe, to them, we are the loud ones. You smile at that thought. The irony of us shouting into space, while life already whispers here in forms we fail to see. Perhaps Earth is full of messages encoded in fungal networks, in whale songs, in the dance of fireflies. Perhaps intelligence has more forms than we dare to define. Perhaps the universe has been speaking all along, and we are just now learning the grammar. And maybe that's what the silence means. Not emptiness,